We've come to depend on GPS systems. What would you do? I mean, printed maps are just not very useful anymore. Drive and look at the map at the same time. So GPS systems have become very important to us. But I had a funny experience in Spain a couple of years ago with a GPS system. I was traveling with a friend in northern Spain. We had a pretty good car with a built-in GPS system. And we looked at the map and we saw that St. Ignatius of Loyola was was born and lived his early life about 80 miles from where we were. So we plugged in the address into the GPS system, got in the car, traveled about 80 miles, and everything went pretty well until GPS told us to get off the road. We ended up in this sort of small village. We said, well, I guess Ignatius was born in a small village, Loyola. But then the GPS had us turn right or something. We ended up on this dirt road. The dirt road eventually brought us up a hill and into the middle of a field, and we were surrounded by cows. And one cow came up to the window of the car, started licking the window, and the GPS system said, "You have arrived at your destination." Well, clearly we hadn't arrived at our destination. And fortunately, there was a farmer and his car there nearby. And he said, "Can I help you?" And we explained, we're looking for Loyola, where St. Ignatius was born. And he laughed and laughed. And finally, he said, "Just follow me." So we turned the GPS system off and followed this guy for about 5 kilometers. And lo and behold, we came to this big town, Loyola, and we had a great visit. So, why do I tell you all this? What does it have to do with the readings today? Well, they're sort of unusual readings. They seem to be describing the end of the world. Both the prophet Daniel, first reading, and the evangelist Mark, describing pretty dramatic situations. Daniel, already at the beginning of his prophecy, chapter 7, he says, the temple will be destroyed in the end times. No stone will be left upon stone. And then he comes to this passage in chapter 12, and he says something like the same thing. There will be no greater distress in any other time but this one. So pretty dramatic things. And when a Jew heard it said that the temple is going to be destroyed, that's like, standing in front of the Capitol building in Washington and somebody telling you it's all going to be destroyed. Wow, For a Jew, the temple was the center, the religious center, but also the cultural center, the historical center, even the political center. It defined them as Jews. You're going to destroy this. Oh. And then in the gospel, we hear a similar kind of thing. Jesus says to the crowds, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Now again, you got to think about this. Imagine what this meant for a Jew in the first century. They didn't have GPS machines, How did they travel? They traveled by looking at the stars and the sun and the moon, and that's how they traveled. So if that disappears, they're going to end up in a field surrounded by cows. They're going to get lost. So these two readings are talking to us about God's people losing all sense of direction, of losing the means by which they could navigate through life. They've lost their GPS system. Pretty dramatic. So what happens? How do we navigate? What is the new GPS system that has been provided? In the gospel, Jesus says all of this is going to happen. The navigation system is going to be destroyed within a generation. Now, Jesus didn't say within 1,000,000 years at the end of time. He says within a generation. This generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. What Jesus is saying, in effect, is all of this is happening within 10 years. And what's going to happen within 10 years of Jesus' saying is, he's going to die, and he's going to rise from the dead. Jesus is trying to tell the Jews, trying to tell us, that he now is supplying us with a new star, if you want, with a new direction for our lives. Instead of following the stars, the moon, the sun, now we're going to follow Jesus. He is providing direction. And what did Jesus do? He died, and he rose from the dead. Life is going to be changed. Jesus made possible by his dying and his rising from the dead to no longer fear death. What's the GPS system that runs your life? What are the values or the ideals that guide you through life? I can only speak for myself. Good health. You get to be my age, you got to worry about those things. Good health, sort of self-preservation, success in life, self-promotion. For young people, good career, the perfect mate. These are the kinds of sort of guidelines that determine the choices that we make in life. Jesus is providing us with something radically different. He's saying, good health? Yeah. Is it the ultimate value? Fighting your enemy. Is that the ultimate value? Jesus comes along and he says, love your enemy. He comes along and he says, so you're going to suffer in life. So you're going to have to deal with death. I have been victorious over death. You see the kind of total turnaround in values that Jesus worked by dying on the cross and by rising from the dead. Complete turnaround. Yeah. Jesus makes this possible. He's provided us with another kind of navigation system for life. So I think these readings don't simply talk about the end of the world. They talk about us here and now living according to another standard, living according to values which Jesus has made possible by his teaching, by his death, and by his resurrection. So the next time you're fretting too much about that organic chemistry exam, I wouldn't say just brush it off, but I would say, hey, It's not the end of the world, is it? There are other values that are maybe even more important. When you're upset with somebody that you just can't stand, say something kind to the person. That's what Jesus makes possible. Another GPS system that we're invited to follow tonight. May we open ourselves to that kind of grace and to the power that Jesus gives us to live in that way.